Tonight, we're talking about the current state of Apex Legends ranked and why it's not as fun as it used to be. Then I'm going to try my best to explain all the confusing parts of Christopher Nolan's Tenet. Some of it can definitely make sense, but some of it straight up just doesn't make sense. And finally, I'm going over all the things that make a good disaster movie: sympathetic characters, imminent danger, and much, much more. This is Did Y'all See That? Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm your host. First of all, welcome to Did Y'all See That? Getting ahead of myself. Welcome to our inaugural podcast broadcast of Did Y'all See That on TikTok right now. So, very exciting for that. We're live on TikTok and Twitch right now. Welcome to Did Y'all See That? I am your host, Ngozi Mai, the Jungu VTuber, and thank you all for tuning into the show. We have a lot to get through tonight, but first, the rundown. Tonight's episode is a pop your culture episode where we're going to be exploring various relevant topics in modern media, and we're going to just nerd the fuck out, y'all. Feel free to comment away throughout the show. I cannot promise I'll be following the chat really at all, but I definitely encourage you guys to discourse with each other. I'm going to be talking about interesting stuff, so just talk about it. There will be no spoilers in this episode. Technically, there's going to be spoilers in the Tenet portion of this episode, but that movie's been out for 2 years, so it's kind of fair game now. With that all out of the way, folks, let's get started with pop your culture. Ow, you bubs, pop your culture like this. Tell me about it, goes you work that shit. Ow, you bubs, pop your culture like this. Tell me about it, goes you work that shit. Alrighty, welcome to Pop Your Culture. In this segment, as I just mentioned, we're talking about pop culture. Let's get started with the presentation. With the first segment, in case you missed it. In this segment, I'll go over the spark notes of notable pop culture news in the past month. And to start it off, we're starting off with a bang, guys. Winnie the Pooh. There is going to be a Winnie the Pooh slasher horror movie. And I gotta say, it looks really fucking bad, guys. They put out a trailer for this last week. I watched it. It is like as C movie as you can possibly get. And when you hear the backstory, it's going to make a little bit more sense. So the original Winnie the Pooh story, the original novel, came out back in 1926, and it entered public domain in January of this year. And literally right after that, a production company called Jagged Edge Productions jumped on that shit. They literally produced and filmed and marketed an entire movie in about the span of 9 months, and it's bad. It's so terrible, guys. The guys, the character that's Winnie the Pooh and Piglet are just some grown ass men with a really fucked up Pooh Bear mask on, and they're just murdering bitches. The film shares the same backstory of a young boy named Christopher Robin. If anybody that knows Winnie the Pooh knows this. Christopher Robin befriends a group of adorable animal friends, playing games with them and giving them food. But as he grew up, he stopped visiting as often, and the animals began to starve and become desperate. This causes Pooh Bear and Piglet to kind of go sort of crazy as fuck and murder the rest of the animals and eat their flesh. Oh my God. So now they turn their sights on a group of college girls staying in a cabin because, college girls staying in a cabin, you just got to murder those bitches, right? That's horror movie rules right there. No release date yet on this, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really holding my breath on this one. This looks pretty terrible. I think this is gonna be a hate watch. Rick and Morty season 6 premiered this week, and it was kind of funny. It's definitely feeling like Rick and Morty has long approached the line of overstaying its welcome, but kudos to Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland for keeping the show fresh with new adventures. They were continuing with the fan service with this episode, it's funny because they love to hate that shit. Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon hate fan service. They want to just make a stupid ass show, but fans are just like, oh no, give us lore, give us more backstory and all that shit, right? But they did it anyway, where we get to see Rick's original universe some more. We've seen his universe in seasons past, where we saw his origin story, where his wife Diane and his daughter Beth, his little girl daughter Beth, were exploded by another Rick because they wanted this Rick, the Rickest Rick, to join their Rick coalition. And he if you recall last season, he spent a whole ass montage traversing the galaxies and the universes trying to hunt that Rick down and never found him. So now we get to go back to Rick's universe, which is interesting. We get to go back to Morty's original Cronenberg universe. That was like back in like season 1, where they totally cuck fucked their fucking universe and made everybody Cronenberg monsters. So that was interesting going back to there. And then we actually even see Jerry's original universe. We find out that this Jerry isn't even the Jerry that's supposed to be in this universe, which I think we knew. Because remember in Jerry Jamboree, like in season 2, I think, they just kind of switched to Jerry's. and that Jerry's just such a beta dude. He's just like, okay, you guys are my Ricks now. The B story in this episode was about was centering on the 2 Beths and Summer, which was kind of mid, to be honest, but I thought it was a pretty good start to the season. Hopefully there'll be no more shark jumping giant incest babies in the show. I'm kind of done with that shit. Holy crap, the drama that has been a brewing with this week with this fucking movie. This new Olivia Wilde film, Don't Worry, Darling. I know if y'all are on Twitter and not living under a rock, you know that some drama has been happening with this shit. It started off the week with leading lady Florence Pugh, pictured here, absent from all the press tours in the production. So, of course, all of social media and the tabloids speculated, saying, oh shit, there's beef between Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde, which honestly, those rumors have been kind of getting a little bit out of hand lately. Most of it's around creative differences concerning the film. Like in Florence's perspective, like she's been quoted saying things like she doesn't really like how much sex is prevalent in the movie. It's very much a sex movie. Like it's all, which Olivia Wilde has describe the film as empowering for women because it's all about women pleasure. So I think that's the reason why she puts sex so prevalent in the film. But I guess from the actor's standpoint, it's just would you just hire me to fuck? You know? So I honestly get Florence's grievances for that. There's also rumors that she wasn't particularly wild about the director Olivia Wilde fucking her co-star Harry Styles, which Styles had his own drama when he entered the film, because basically the role, the co-starring, the role opposite of Florence Pugh was supposed to go to Shia LaBeouf. And he got hired, I think, in April of 2020 or something like that. And literally 4 months later, it was announced that Harry Styles took his place. And for that was also kind of creative differences. I guess Shia LaBeouf is kind of a method actor, and people don't really like that. Which fair. If you guys don't know what method actors are, they're pretty much people that want to just become their role, and it makes them into kind of toxic people. This is a bit of a tangent, but Jared Leto on the set of Suicide Squad apparently sent used condoms to castmates because he was playing Joker, and that's a Joker thing to do, I guess. I don't know. Method acting makes for debatably good performances, but it sucks to be around that. It sucks to try to have to work with that. So I get it. Tangent over. Anyway, Harry Styles took his place, and then shortly after that, it was announced. I don't know what happened. I don't know what came first, but it was announced that Harry Styles was in a relationship with Olivia Wilde, and Jason Sudeikis, who was Olivia Wilde's partner, split up from them. I don't know. It's suspiciously close, those two events happening. So that was kind of the start of the drama of the show. And it led to earlier this year, Jason Sudeikis having a paralegal serve custody papers to Olivia Wilde on stage at a press event for the movie. So holy shit, the tea is hot with this fucking movie. Oh God, and not to mention, the movie's kind of getting panned right now. Apparently the movie's bad. Apparently it's bad. So on top of all of this fucking bullshit that they're putting all of this production crew through, and all the bullshit they've had to deal with for 2 years, and now the movie's getting panned by critics. So it is just radioactive at this point, and I'm sipping the hell out of this tea. The hilarious duo Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele are reuniting for a new stop-motion dark fantasy comedy horror film, Wendell and Wild. As the title demons, Wendell and Wild. I saw this trailer very surprisingly yesterday on Twitter, and I was like, damn, it is giving Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm into it, except Blackified, which I love that shit. So the film is directed by Henry Selick. There's a reason why I gave those vibes, because Henry Selick also he directed The Nightmare Before Christmas, as well as James and the Giant Peach and Coraline. So if you've seen any of those movies, you know exactly the vibe that we're gonna get from Wendell and Wild. It's very exciting. Not much is known about the plot of this film other than the fact that it's two demon brothers that are trying to be summoned to the land of the living, and they're enlisting the help of a 13-year-old girl named Cat Elliott. That's it. That's all we know. But given the minds behind it and the mesmerizing aesthetics of the trailer, it looked really, really colorful and vibrant and weird and very much in line with Nightmare Before Christmas. I think this is gonna be a fucking banger. I'm excited about it. Let's go. And finally, Cyberpunk 2077 is getting its first full-sized expansion. Phantom Liberty is set to release in 2023, expanding on the story of the base game, and the trailer looked pretty damn good, to be honest. Though, always take those pre-rendered trailers on video games with a grain of salt. I played this game when it first came out, and to say it was disappointing would be an understatement. Anybody that played it at launch can probably agree with that. Notwithstanding the gnarly bugs that were riddling the game, I honestly had trouble getting into the world, getting immersed into the cyberpunk world, and I kind of really regretted that. So now that the game is finally in a healthy, playable state, it's like apparently a totally different experience from launch. It honestly might be time to give it another honest try. So we don't know much about the plot of Phantom Liberty. The only detail we really know is that Keanu Reeves is returning to reprise his role as the rough and sexy Johnny Silverhand. So, and there's also actually an update that came out this week, I believe, called Edge Runners, which is intentionally named because there's actually a Netflix show called Cyberpunk Edge Runners that is also dropping this week. So this might actually be a really good time to pick Cyberpunk back up, folks. So I'm gonna probably be doing it, and you should do it too. And that, folks, is in case you missed it. Let's move on to our next segment tonight, Gozy Rants. In this segment, I will rant about a pop culture topic that has got me feeling a type of way. And this month, y'all, that topic is Apex Legends, specifically Apex Legends Ranked. What is Apex Legends? For those of you that don't know, Apex Legends is a battle royale game. A battle royale game is one where you team up with, I think anywhere between solo and like 4 people. I don't know if there's a VR game with more than 4 people, but the idea is you drop down onto a large map and you pick up guns. And you have to pick up loot quickly, and you have to try to find loot on the way. And the whole point of the game is to be the last team standing. So you got to kill people. You got to make smart decisions. You have to strategize on ring placement. You got to strategize on third parties. It's all about strategy, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people, myself included, gravitate toward the game. It's not as simple as Call of Duty, shoot, kill, kill. It's shoot, kill, kill. But you also have to be thinking 20 steps ahead on what you're going to be doing like 3 minutes from now, 4 minutes from now, 5 minutes from now. So it's a really fascinating game, extremely addicting, and I love it. And specifically, tonight I'm specifically talking about ranked. What is ranked? So ranked is a flavor of the game, of the BR game, that kind of puts you in a tier that is supposed to reflect your skill. So it is a grind fest. You have to grind what's called ranked points, or also known as RP, to gain higher ranks. And the people with the highest number of ranked points are called Apex Predators. So that's the idea. It's supposed to be the higher you go, the harder your games get, the more rewarding it's supposed to feel, And unfortunately, it feels less like it's skill. Don't get me wrong. People that are at Apex Predator, people that are that high, they're fucking good at this game. They are fucking good at this game. And you can see it because every season they get up to Apex Predator quickly. You can tell, who those people are. I think the group of people that are hurt the most in the system are the middle. Not even the bottom, not even the worst players in the game. It's the people that are like anywhere from adequately okay to very good, but not Apex level. That chunk of players are the ones I think that get hurt in this system. The ones that don't really have the rank really affect or reflect their skill anymore. And it's kind of exacerbated in this current sandbox. So let's talk about ranked points. So RPs are awarded based on placement in the Battle Royale games, as well as kill points, or KP. You stay alive longer, you get more points. That's what you're seeing here. This is basically the scale. If you die, if you're like the 11th, 12th, or 13th team to die, you're only going to get 5 rank points. But if you're the 3rd team to die, you're going to get 70. Like, they very much incentivize staying alive in the game. The second way to get RP is from kills. So the more kills you get, the more points you get. And previously, this was actually capped. In season 14, the current season, they made it uncapped. So it's making it so that people that are that play the game in a very fragger way, where they just like go kill, 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 and they stay alive until like the last like 5 squads, they're able to rack up like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of RP. It used to be that like the highest amount of RP you could get was per game was around 230. I've seen like 1,000. I've seen people get like 1,000 RP. So it's really fascinating. And honestly, I think that was a pretty good change. The structure, what comes with the ranked points, you don't just get ranked points. You also lose ranked points. So if you start the game with a cost that is more than how many rank points you earned in the game, you're going to lose RP. Previously, in the lowest tier of this, there wasn't really a cost. It was free, so you can just grind and get to the next level. And even after that, the cost was very nominal. It went from -12 to -24 to -36 every time you would get up a new rank. And a big change that they made in this is that they increased the cost, and also they're increasing it more frequently. So it's not just it increases when you go bronze, silver, gold, platinum. It increases in the subdivisions. Bronze 4 to bronze 3 increases. Bronze 3 to bronze 2 increases. And as a result, it gets progressively more imperative that you gain points. That seems simple. It seems simple. You're like, Gozy, of course, that makes sense for ranked. Until you realize that the current sandbox the game is in is making it so that it's harder to do that, especially as a solo player. For one, you get a lot of randoms that don't give a fuck or just don't know, and you'll just die, and it's not your fault. You know, there's a lot of people that will lose they will lose so many rank points. They will just lose RP game after game after game, and it's not even their fault. So that's a really big reason why the game is a little bit unfun right now, especially for solo players. You are forced to find people to play with. And that's another thing you're probably thinking, Gozy, why don't you just go find people to play with? It's not that easy. It's not that easy, babe. I told you, this game is very strategy heavy. Part of that strategy is the people you play with, whose play styles complement your own, you know, whose play styles contradict your own, you know. So when you find 2 people that you love to play with, you got to like find time to grind with those 2 people for hours and hours and hours so that you all can excel to the next level. And it's really not easy to do, you know. There have been some really great changes in the sandbox. For one, the gun meta is healthier than it's ever been. It used to be that when you play Apex, or at least I'm just going to talk about my own experience. When I would play Apex Legends, I felt like I always had to have an SMG and an auto rifle. I always had to have those 2 things. I could not touch a sniper. I could not touch a marksman. I could not touch a shotgun, because the way the meta worked was that if you did, you're going to like lose more gunfights. You're just going to be less equipped than you would otherwise. Now with the meta, they've shuffled around guns to different subclasses, you know, they've added new guns, they've taken guns off the floor, and it makes it so that the game is in such a healthy spot where I feel like as soon as I drop, whatever gun I pick up, that's the gun I'm going to use. And that's okay. I can do that. Like, it's really liberating, quite frankly, in both pubs and ranked. This is like one of the biggest great changes that they could have done. And I really hope they can maintain this balance, because it makes it so that the game is just a lot more fun, a lot less monotonous, because that gets really boring playing the same guns and the same strats every single game. We'll get back to that. Self-res used to be a thing in the game. It used to be that if you picked up the gold knockdown shield, and if you get knocked, you could res yourself. It's, in most cases, this is like totally fine. Like, you're in a gunfight and people can like res themselves and clutch the gunfight, and those are fine. The biggest beef that people had with this mechanic was end game, especially because there were so many knockdown shields that would drop in the world. I've actually seen games where like at the very last ring, the ring is like closing, it's about to close shut, and there's one person still up and like 4 people or 5 people that are all knocked, and they all had gold knockdown shields. Like, that's wrong, bro. That's wrong, because it makes it, here's the thing, here's what happens when that happens. The last ring, when you go out into the storm is killing you really, really quickly. You'll die in about like 5 seconds. But if you have a gold knockdown shield, you die slower. So even if you're in a 1v1 and you knock that person, and that was the last person on their team, but they have a gold knockdown shield, and you can't get behind them safely to finish them off, you're going to be the one to die. You will lose the game instead of them, even though they lost the fight. And that's the reason why people were so against this. And honestly, I think, and now it's gone. Now it's gone. They removed this perk entirely from the game. And I think that was a really positive move, you know. As much as fun as it is to just like clutch a game when you don't deserve it on your when it's happening, when the opposite is happening to you, that sucks, you know. So this being removed from the game was a dub. Another thing they did in season 14 is they revised where the rings are closing. So the rings are basically the things that keep the game moving. And the ring starts all the way outside the map, and then it slowly closes in every round after round after round until it totally closes shut. And this forces people to play the game. Previously, the rings were pretty not smart where they would end up in each of the maps. And as a result, there would be some games where you would end up on different levels in the same ring, right? So somebody would be on top of in this picture, somebody would be on top of the building, somebody would be inside the building, and the ring would be closing. And in that case, you can't fight each other because as soon as someone goes out of the ring, they're going to insta-die. So you're stuck doing something called heal-offs. And it's basically you just have to heal and hope the ring kills the other person first. This is not fun. This is a really not fun way to end a game. And this happened to me multiple times. And now they're making the rings smarter so that they don't end in places where this can happen. It's at least not as much. I think that was a really positive change. They also tuned a gun called the Kraber. So the Kraber is kind of the Deus Ex Machina gun in the whole game. It doesn't require very much skill because it's a sniper. And previously it would do 377 damage to if you got hit in the head, it would do 377 damage to you. It could instantly knock anybody in the game. Doesn't matter how strong your armor is, it could instantly knock you. They made the change in I think season 13. It wasn't even this season they made this change. They made this change so that it can't do that anymore. Even if you get domed, as long as you have a purple or higher helmet and a purple or higher shield, you will not get knocked. You will get one shot, but they can't knock you in one shot. This was met with mixed feelings. I think the biggest outcry for this was from the pro scene because they're playing for money. You know, when you're playing in like a $250,000 tournament and somebody fucking just picks up this Deus Ex Machina guns and mind you, in the tournament scene, they're all extremely good. You know, we're going to talk a little bit later about how there are two different tiers of players in here. There's two different kinds of games being played here. And at the very highest tier of this game, everybody's good. So you have to assume that anything that could give someone an edge is going to give someone an unfair edge, you know? Like you have to be very careful about giving edges because at the highest tier, everyone is equally amazing at the game. So it makes it unfair, if that makes sense. Like earlier like in a lower tier of the game, there are better players and there's a lot worse players. So when a better player gets it, like they kind of deserve, when they get that edge, they kind of deserve it. But at the highest tier of the game, it just makes it unfun. So this tuning of this gun to make it so that it cannot instantly knock you anymore was a very smart play. I think that was a very, very smart change. Let's talk about the source of the unfun. One of my biggest beefs with ranked is the lack of incentive to play. Ranked is a very mentally taxing thing to do. It's a very mentally taxing way to play this game. Excuse me. Because you have to gain RP, and losing RP hurts. When you play pubs, if you drop hot and you fuck up and you lose a game, that's okay. You don't lose anything. It's just okay. You just requeue. So it's no skin off your bones. In ranked, especially the higher you get, if you're just on the edge to get to the next rank and you lose 200 RP, that sucks. That sucks, you know? It feels terrible. And there's a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of times where you lose and lose and lose, and you just have to choose to stop playing that day. It is a very mentally taxing way to play this game. And there's not enough incentive to do it. So think about the people that have been playing. Oh, well, sorry about that. Oop, let me see. Oh, sorry. All right. This will get edited out in post. I just saw something weird with the stream. Back to it. The people that have been playing this game since day one have been, getting to Apex Predator every single season ever since then, right? As a result, all of these rewards they get, they've gotten multiple times already, So on the higher end, there's not really much incentive for them to play, other than the fact that it shows their rank. They can be number 1 pred, number 2 pred, great. But a lot of these players have already done that 10 times already. So there's not a lot of, they get a dive trail. They had a dive trail last season and the season before that, and these rewards have not been updated at all, pretty much since the game launched, And then on the lower end, the rewards being, okay, you make it up to gold, you make it up to platinum, you get the card, you get the dive trail. And that feels good. That really does feel good. But when you can't make it to that, when you're solo queuing and you just can't get up to that because you keep getting randoms that are getting you killed and you can't find a dedicated team to play with, it kind of makes it feel like it's for nothing. It kind of makes it feel like all of that like effort you put into it and all of that mental fucking breakdown that you've done to yourself is for nothing, So in my opinion, I just there's not enough incentive to really make yourself go through that, in my opinion. The wall hack legends are kind of becoming mandatory in this sandbox. We've got a lot of recon legends, and pretty much ever since Seer came out, Seer is considered like kind of one of the most broken characters in the game with how much he can do. And as a result, and it doesn't help that like with ALGS, all of the pros were exploiting the fuck out of it too. So now everybody's doing it. So now, especially in ranked, it feels like Seers is a mandatory character that every team has to play, because otherwise every other team in the lobby has an advantage over you because they have a Seer, and it really limits who you can play. I think like the magic of this game is that there's so many characters you can play and so many different guns you can play and comps you can play and different attachments and all of these different cool things that you can do, all of these different synergies that you can create. But when you have a character this cracked, it takes away that that creativeness. You don't get to be creative anymore. You just have to I think that's a reason why people love this game so much, is because like it's the idea is that every game is different. Every game is supposed to be different. You have some where you drop hot. You have some where you didn't drop so hot, and you go all the way to the end of the game. You have some where you have to do like a Mexican standoff where you're on two opposite sides of the ring, and you have to like snipe each other. Like the idea is that's supposed to be special. Every game is supposed to be different. And this kind of shit is what makes every game the same. Every game has to be played the same way. And that sucks to me. Not to mention that certain maps make it so that certain legends are more necessary. This map is Stormpoint. And Stormpoint doesn't have any balloons. The balloons are the mechanisms that we use to traverse the map quickly. You go up the balloon and you fly somewhere new. That's how you can kind of rotate quickly, especially when the ring's coming in and you really need to get away. That's like how you would do it on every other map. Stormpoint is unique that it doesn't have those. It has something called grav cannons that will just launch you linearly in one direction, and it might be the wrong direction. As a result, this map requires Valkyrie pretty much. Valkyrie is the only legend that can do what's called a skyward dive, making it so that she can take her entire team up into the air just like it was a balloon and fly somewhere else. It kind of makes her mandatory for this. Otherwise, you have no movement. You could get stuck behind a mountain. You could get into a big firefight with someone and it takes too long and now the ring's coming in and you have no way to get the fuck into the ring. I have died to the ring to that more than once. And you can argue, oh, okay, Gozy, that's ring awareness though. You have to be more aware of the ring before you get into the fight. Easier than said than done, babe. Easier said than done. There's other characters too that they're very much movement characters and vertical characters like Horizon. She has her Q ability that makes it so she can go up in the air. She can get height on people. Vantage also can do that. Also, Vantage has her ult where she gets a fucking free sniper with free ammo pretty much at the beginning of the game, and it makes it so that like that's kind of necessary because it's the same thing with Seer. Like everybody's got a Vantage. So now, you have to play, you got to make sure you have a Vantage so you can counter sniper. Otherwise, if nobody has a sniper on your team, you're fucked. So it's just like, it kind of like pigeonholes how you can play the game, depending on the maps. Like every map in Apex Legends has their own issues. I think personally, this is probably my biggest gripe because it just limits how you can play the game. And I really prize how free that this game makes me feel. And I don't like being limited. There's also, so I mentioned this previously, there's two different games being played here. There's the game that most of the player base is playing, and I would consider this level platinum and lower. Platinum, I would consider pretty fucking good at the game. You're not an Apex Predator, you're not a pro, but you're pretty fucking good. You can kind of stomp on just about anybody below you. So from platinum all the way to noob, that the people that play those games play a totally different game than diamond to Apex Predator. From diamond to Apex Predator, you could, like I said, you can pretty much assume everybody has insanely cracked aim because you kind of need it. You kind of need it to be at that level. And as a result, they're just better, you know? Because of that, previously, the matchmaking in ranked used to be very tightly coupled to who's in your ranked. And as a result, the higher ranks would have really long queue times. Like, and it, like absurdly long. Like in the Apex Legend, like mind you, this is the Apex Predators. I think the entire world on a platform shares Apex Predators. So the top 750 in the world, whereas there are dozens of servers throughout the world. As a result, there could be like as few as like two Apex Predators in a given server. So as a result, they would be sitting there. These Apex Predators would be sitting there in matchmaking for like 30 minutes at a time. Like there's one, I forget what streamer it is, but there's one Apex streamer that like would go and straight up stream a different game for 30 minutes while he's waiting for fucking matchmaking. This is a problem. I am acknowledging that is a big problem, and I don't know how to solve that. They tried to solve it this season, and I think this season specifically, they tried to solve it by letting as low as gold into those lobbies. So now when you see ranked lobbies, if you hit gold 1, there is a very pretty high chance that you're going to have a Predator in your lobby, an Apex Predator in your lobby. That's not right, man. That should not be happening. You should not have somebody that is magnitudes better at this game, magnitudes higher skill than you in your lobby in a ranked game. Because in my opinion, one of the biggest values of ranked is that it makes you a better player. When you reach a rank that has other people that are reliably at your skill level and you're only playing the people at your skill level, you will get better at the game. You're forced to. You know, they're better. They could be better than you. They're not that much better than you, but it's enough for you to be able to adapt and learn and get better. If you are playing against somebody that is 4 or 5 levels higher than you, much better at the game than you, and you're just getting schmacked, you are not learning how to play the game. You will not get better by doing that. You are not going to get better by having Apex Predators just fucking mollywop you. It's the same as you're not going to get better by having a 3-stack. If you're a solo player and you got a 3-stack that are all communicating coming at you, you're not going to get better in that situation. And I think that's that is probably the biggest grief that I have with Apex Legends ranked right now, because I don't feel like I'm getting better, you know? So, not to mention losing RP sucks. A new development that they added was demotion after 3 losses. If you have 3 losses in a given division of a rank, you'll go down to the previous rank. That sucks. That is so punishing, and that is actually not what people ask for. I think the whole demotion conversation really comes about with people getting hard stuck. It's a term called hard stuck. And basically what hard stuck means is if you grinded out of a previous rank and you just eked into the next rank, but everybody is too much better than you in that next rank and you can't get any higher, you're not hard stuck. So you get out of plat 1 and you're in diamond 4, you'll be hard stuck in diamond 4. A lot of people get that way. It can be because that was your goal and now you're just stopped and you don't want to play anymore. That's fine. But for a lot of people, they just keep playing ranked, but they just don't fucking care. You know, there'll be people that are hard stuck in Diamond 4, but then there's people that are actually trying to get out of Diamond 4 and they get match made together and that person drops them hot and makes them lose 36, 64 RP, however much RP is in Diamond 4. That sucks, man. That fucking sucks. So as a result, to sort of combat that, Respawn added this demotion mechanic that makes it so if you lose 3 games, you get demoted. This is more harsh than anybody wanted. People really just wanted demotion over time. That you had to maintain, you had to play a certain number of ranked games per week in order to maintain your rank, or else you'll just like lose like 100, 200, 300, 400 RP every week. That would have been fine if they would have gone that road. But no, they went this fucking way. They went full ass with this. And as a result, it is punishing, you know? And this goes back to what I was saying with the mental tax that this puts on us. It was already mentally taxing before this shit. This made it worse. It can also turn people into kind of mean people. When I would play ranked this season, I would play with my friends, like my IRL friends. And when we play pubs, it's fine. It's all fun. Like people get like maybe a little, oh, come on, man. But you just say you whatever and you go into the next game. But because the stakes are so high with ranked, where you lose RP, you know, it makes it so people get a little bit more emotional. They get mean. My friends would get mean to me. And that was actually the last time I played a ranked game this season, because I played with my friend and they were like being really mean to me. And I was like, okay, fuck this. I'm not having fun. I'm not playing this mode anymore. That's kind of it. That was the last straw for me. So it just turns people into a more mean people because they're more emotional because they don't want to lose RP. So the smallest mistake that their teammate makes, they can lash out at them. And that sucks. That sucks. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen in pubs, but it sure as fuck doesn't happen nearly as much. And the current ranked map is also kind of contributing to how unfun it is. Kings Canyon is historically an extremely unfortunate map for Battle Royale because of how it's structured. It makes it so that third parties happen all the fucking time. You can hear a gunshot from like 200 yards away, so you can just go to that fight and go third party them. In this map, it is very much not uncommon for third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh parties to happen. It's not uncommon for like a third party to happen. They finish that fight, then another team comes in, finish that fight, another team comes in, finish that fight. That happens often on this map. And it's not so bad for pubs. Because pubs, you're just like, oh, okay, that was some bullshit, but whatever, we're gonna just requeue. For ranked, it becomes punishing. It makes it so everybody is like afraid to do anything. You kind of just have to rat the whole game. You know, you can try to, you can be the best player in the world, babe. You can be fucking Imperial Hal himself. But if you get third partied at the wrong time when your team just wiped up another team and y'all are all weak and you didn't have time to reset, you'll die. You're going to lose your RP. You could be the number 1 Apex pred and you will die to chance because of third partying. And because this map makes those third parties worse, it makes them more common. You know, it's easier to third party in this map. And that's, you know, that makes it really not fun because you're losing RP again and it's not even your fault, you know? So Kings Canyon, it's a fine map for pubs, but for ranked, not so good. How do we fix it? What in my opinion, this is what in my opinion Respawn could do to make the experience of ranked more desirable for the masses. Go back to dedicated lobbies for ranked at the cost of longer queue times for higher tier players. I'm gonna get canceled for that. If y'all ever like send this video to one of those fucking pro players, they're gonna flame the shit out of me for this opinion. And I'm sorry. I am sorry that queue times are long for you, but the other side of it is that it makes it so that mid-tier players, people that are like gold and platinum, can't get better at the game because they're playing preds all the time, you know? Skill-based matchmaking is a thing for pubs. I rarely ever see preds in pubs. If I'm seeing preds in pubs, it's because my elo is higher and I deserve to be there, you know? But other than that, I usually only see diamonds and masters because that's the level I'm at. That's the skill-based matchmaking for pubs. That's not a thing. That's not a thing for fucking ranked. In ranked, it's based on your rank. So it's like, until they can make ranks in ranked more reflective of your skill, as opposed to, you know, that wouldn't even help because Apex Predators are still so much higher. It really is. They have to make dedicated lobbies. Put all platinums in lobbies. In a platinum lobby, there should only be platinum players. In a diamond lobby, there should only be diamond players. You know, in my opinion. Please don't cancel me. Also, wait until the Kings Canyon's not the ranked map anymore. The next map is going to be Storm Point. I don't like Storm Point as a map, but I will admit it is a far better ranked map than Kings Canyon. It's bigger. For one, it's bigger. It's got way more points of interest, and it's a lot harder to third party because you can't hear shit because it's so big. You know, the downside to that is the games are boring. And maybe that's what ranked is. Maybe ranked is just boring games where you don't really get into fights until the last ring, you know, just like comp. Maybe that's what ranked is. And that's what Stormpoint like kind of gets for free because it's such a large map. People are spending the whole game just trying to get to the middle of the ring. It's very common to just not have a fight until the end of the game. So I don't know. And then also incentives, you know, people have floated ideas like exclusive skins for ranked. Like if you're in ranked in season 13, maybe you get like a bloodhound skin that fucking rocks or something, or some ornament or something to just put on your skin that people can see. People can see in game. It's not just on your card. It's like you're running around the game and you can see, holy shit, that's fucking Apex Predator. Oh my God. Like something like that. Or permanent dives trails, extra Apex packs, some extra incentive to get people to be okay with putting themselves through such a mentally taxing ordeal to playing this game. And then finally, like better counters for wall hack legends. Like I mentioned, wall hack legends are a really big problem in the game right now. Like it really makes it so that like if you're a wall hack legend, you just have such a fucking advantage. Even Vantage here, like the fact that she can like zoom in to a wide area, and as soon as her scope picks up any movement, she can know exactly where they are. They'll have like an icon telling you exactly where that person is, even if your naked eye doesn't catch it. That's so strong. That's so fucking strong, man. Like you gotta have counters, like Bangalore Smoke, Crypto's Drone, Caustic's Gas, some counter to those things. They cannot just get that for free. And then that, folks, is Gozy Rants. Hello, folks. If you like what you're hearing or what you're watching, then please check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/GozyMai. That's GOZIMAI, where you'll catch me playing video games, cracking dumbass jokes, and having a good ass time. I post my schedule every Monday on Twitter, so please come and say hi. And now back to the show. Our next segment tonight is Let Me Explain. In this segment, I will attempt to explain a supremely confusing or overly ambiguous piece of pop culture, for better or for worse. And I debate putting spoiler alert on just because, like, Tenet, like I said, has been out for 2 years. I think this is fair game. We'll see. We're talking about Tenet, y'all. Tenet came out in 2020. It was the latest Christopher Nolan movie. Christopher Nolan is known for having very high concept movies, and this was no different. The premise is effectively an unnamed protagonist attempts to steal an object that can cause the end of the world that will happen in the distant future, caused by a Russian guy that is sending technology called the algorithm in time via a time capsule. If that sentence did not make sense to you, you're not alone there, honey. The whole movie, that is the point of this entire segment, is for me to try to make that sentence make sense to you. Let's dive right in. So there's a concept called inverted entropy. That is kind of the basis for the science in the whole movie. What is inverted entropy? It's effectively matter that can go through something called a turnstile. It's basically just a receptacle it can go through that will cause it to experience inverted entropy in the normal world that it coexists in. So in the movie, how this would be depicted is a bullet that is on the table. If you hover your hand over it, the bullet will come back to your hand like you just dropped it. Like, that's the idea. It is coexisting in our normal world, going in the normal flow of time. It is just backwards. From our perspective, it's going backwards. From the object's perspective, it's going forward, and we're going backwards. I'm going to try to explain this. Let's see if this works. So the idea is that if you are inverted, the world isn't. Everything reacts to you in reverse. When you run, the wind blows against your back. You know, if you come into contact with fire, ice is going to form on your clothes because the transfer of heat is reversed. That's the idea. So how does the turnstile work? So it's easier to conceptualize this, in my opinion, if you view every time you go through the turnstile, you're splitting yourself in half. So you have an inverted version of yourself and a normal version of yourself. As soon as you come out of the inverted side, you're going to see your normal side on the other side of the window. There's like a window. You go in one side, you come out the other side. If you go in the red side and out the blue side, you're inverted. If you go in the blue side and out the red side, you're normal. That's the idea. And when you come out of the turnstile, you will see your other counterpart exit the turnstile in reverse. So yeah, you can go backward into the turnstile to change the past as many times as you want. It's effectively kind of like a time machine, a little bit. It's a little bit, because the idea is that when you come out, the normal world is going in reverse in relative to you. So in effect, if you say eat a piece of cake, and then you go inside the turnstile, if you wait while your other counterpart is eating the cake for the cake to just like appear, and then you go back out and you eat the cake, you can eat the cake and the cake is still there. That's the idea. You kind of went back in time and you changed the past, because now normal you doesn't get to eat the cake. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So yeah. Oh, another rule is you have to see yourself enter the machine in the other world, quote unquote world, before entering, or you won't get out. That's kind of all they said with that. I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens for real. If you just implode as a person, if you try to go inside the turnstile before your other counterpart does, I don't know. That's effectively you merging. When you go inside and the other person goes inside, you're merging back into one. But if you go inside and if you exit, you're splitting. I really hope this is making sense. So let's talk about the scene with the scientist explaining inversion. This is very early on in the movie. And I think their attempt was to kind of like rip the Band-Aid off with the fucking convoluted nature of this movie. Basically, they showed the bullet coming back to her hand. Like so the bullet was inverted. She put it on the table and she like hovered over it and it got back into her hand. Okay. That's fair. My explanation is that someone took the bullet and put it through a turnstile with the gun, and then once it came back through the turnstile, it's inverted now, so it's moving in reverse. Then they shot the gun, and then left the inverted world and came back to the normal world, so that when the protagonist in the normal world like takes the gun, the bullet comes back to it. I think that's how they did it. I think that's how that worked. I really wish I actually just put the clip in here, because like explaining this makes it sound fucking crazy. And it is crazy. I don't even feel bad about it, because this fucking movie is convoluted as shit. I can't really explain past that though, because I actually straight up just doesn't, I don't think it actually makes sense. You know, her logic was that you can't just like hover over the bullet that's on the table, because you have to have acted like you dropped it. But then it comes to mind, how does the universe know when your hand has like been put in the correct position for dropping? It doesn't really make sense. I'm gonna be level with you. I think they really tried to like rip the Band-Aid off with this scene to like try to make it make a little bit of sense, so that when you go later in the movie, you're not as lost. Honestly, I think this fucking scene didn't make a lot of sense at all. And there's scenes later in the movie that just kind of explain the concept a little bit better. Let's talk about the airport scene. So the airport scene is basically an airport in Oslo. I don't know where, Sweden maybe? I don't know. Oslo's in one of those fucking European countries. And it's called Freeport. A Freeport is effectively a large art storage for rich people to store their art without paying taxes on the assets. I don't know if this is a real thing, but I mean, I imagine it probably is. And God, that just like, it's just so weird. It's so weird that like rich people, like absurdly rich people have like different rules, but whatevs. So basically at the Freeport, there is a turnstile we find out. The protagonist, as well as another character named Neil, they happen upon this turnstile. They don't really know what it is. The protagonist is looking around and he's seeing like gunshots that look like they were fired in reverse. And he's like, what the fuck happened here? Neil's like, what the fuck's happened here? And the protagonist said, the fight hasn't happened yet. And then moments later, the turnstile activates and two identical men come out of the turnstile on each side of the glass. One is inverted and one is not inverted. At this moment, the two identical men are the protagonist. We find out later in the movie. So at this moment, there are three versions of the protagonist that exist in the same timeline. Two of them are normal. One is inverted. So that's like a first bit of like, that's kind of where the whole time travel concept comes into play because effectively the protagonist traveled back in time to come out of this turnstile. We'll get more into that a little bit later. After this commences a really, really fucking cool fight scene where the inverted protagonist is fighting his normal counterpart. And it was like kind of one of the coolest fucking scenes in the fucking movie. I saw on, what is it called? The Corridor Crew. They broke down how they did it. And it was just like a really, really meticulously choreographed fight with a little bit of VFX in it too. Now, the question is, why was this inverted version of the protagonist? Why did they come to the airport at that exact moment? Let's get into that. Let's talk about the temporal heist of Compound 241. So basically, you have our big bad. His name is Sator. He's a Russian guy, and he's trying to build that algorithm for the people in the future. He needs something called Compound 241, which we think is plutonium, which is it's actually just like a weird sci-fi shape, like a weird sci-fi geometric shape or some shit like that. And he's trying to steal it. Or actually, correction, the protagonist is trying to steal it because he knows Sator wants it. So we're gonna break this into two timelines. We're gonna call it the forward timeline A and inverted timeline A. We're gonna build on to that later. This is when it starts getting really confusing, so bear with me, babe. So protagonist and Neil steal the suitcase containing plutonium-241 from an armored truck. An inverted Sator, he's inverted, holds his wife Catherine hostage and demands the case from the protagonist. So the protagonist is normal right now, but Sator is inverted already. The normal protagonist gives inverted Sator the case, but also notices an overturned car down the highway, and that joins the chase. So the overturned car unoverturns itself and joins the chase in reverse because they're inverted right now. So the normal protagonist makes eye contact with the driver of that inverted car, but we don't know who that driver is yet. We're going to find out in a minute. The audience can't see who it is, but the protagonist knows who it is, right? Sator's men capture Catherine, as well as the normal protagonist, because they get into an accident, and then they take them to a turnstile, a totally different turnstile. Inverted Sator is on the inverted side, and the protagonist is on the non-inverted side. Inverted Sator realized that the 241 is actually not in the case that the protagonist threw to him. So he's now holding the normal Catherine. This is the normal Catherine that he took into that side. He's holding her hostage. The inverted Sator shoots the normal Catherine with an inverted gun. That causes unexplained radiation to her that's going to kill her faster if they don't invert her soon. So the idea is that when you shoot somebody with an inverted gun, but they're normal, the inverted radiation will kill them. They did not explain any further than that, so let's just leave it as it is. I think in their opinion, they were just like, you know what? We don't need to explain this part. Just believe it. We just told you, just believe it happens. So inverted Sator shoots the normal Catherine, and then the normal protagonist then tells him he left it in the glove box. When he says that, the normal Sator comes in and heard that, and he's just like, okay, so now the normal Sator just heard him. He left it in the glove box, and then a military force comes in and attacks them. Normal Sator and then inverted Sator both enter the turnstile and disappear. So that is forward timeline A. Normal Sator, in inverted timeline B. Sorry, I'm trying here, guys. Fucking bear with me on this. This is so fucking difficult to explain. Inverted timeline A comes up. Normal Sator becomes inverted Sator. So that's the idea. The normal Sator had just heard the glove box for the first time. Inverted Sator had already heard it because he was normal Sator. So now inverted Sator is shooting her, saying, "Hey, are you lying to me?" Like, it's a really weird scene. Bear with me. He pretty much reenacts the exact same scene we just saw where he shoots Catherine. Catherine is dying rapidly from the inverse radiation. Again, don't ask about it. They didn't explain it to us, so just believe it. So then she must go inverted to save her life. A few moments ago, though, the turnstile was in Sator's control, even though that military force came in and occupied the turnstile. If they are to go back inverted right now, they only have a couple of minutes before Sator comes back. So they can't go, like, she can't go into that turnstile, be treated for the wound, and then come back because it's going to take her a few days. So they have to find another turnstile in a few days when she gets better to come back to the normal timeline. That is the reason why they decided to go back in time all the way back to the airport, that Freeport airport. And that is the reason why we see the protagonist come out of the airport, because they have to wait. This protagonist had to wait all that time to a week before to go back to that airport and go through that turnstile. But they also had to kind of fight each other. They had to fight themselves, right? He had to fight his normal version of himself at the time because he just ran into him. It was happenstance. It wasn't even on purpose. He just got blown into the room and had to fight himself. So that explains the reason why we see the protagonist come in contact with his former self in the airport scene. Oh Lord, yo, this movie is nuts. I watched this movie yesterday, dude. I rewatched this yesterday, and it took me like 4 hours to watch it because I was taking all these fucking notes. Let's talk about the algorithm. So the algorithm is pictured here. It's basically just like a bunch of geometric blocks glued to each other. It's Christopher Nolan, don't ask. So basically, in the distant future, generations in the future, a scientist built this algorithm that has the power to invert the world, you know? And I think the reason why she built it is because generations in the future, they're having a climate crisis where the world is about to end anyway. So they're trying to figure out how to like turn back time so they can fix their mistakes and not fucking kill the earth. Unfortunately, she comes to believe after she's invented it that inverting the world is going to destroy it. You know, the idea is turning back the clock all the way to the past is going to make it so that the world never gets created in the first place. Everybody gets obliterated. It's the grandfather paradox. Just like in the analogy they put it to it was Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project. So if y'all are familiar with Oppenheimer, he's like pretty much the scientist that invented the nuclear bomb. Excuse me. And after he invented it, when the US was like trying to use it, he started thinking, what if this sets off a chain reaction that ignites all of the air in the world and incinerates everybody as soon as it goes off? But the US government was just like, yeah, well, we'll gamble it. Yeah, well, it'll be all right. And then they did it anyway. And it's kind of the same situation. Like, this scientist thinks this might destroy the world, but the power in time, the group that's in power at the time, doesn't fucking care. They just want to do it anyway. As a result, she broke up her algorithm. She broke up her invention into 9 pieces and hid them all over the world as safe as they possibly could be. She hid them in nuclear power sites underground, and she inverted them so that they go back in time. So, so basically, she's pretty much hiding them in the past. She's hiding all the pieces in the past so nobody can find them. Unfortunately, one of those nuclear power sites was a Russian nuclear power site. I think they're hinting that it might be Chernobyl or something like that. It was around like when the USSR was about to collapse. And Sator just happened to be one of the forced volunteers that had to go and clear out the rubble. He finds the time capsule. He finds gold in it and instructions as well as a piece of the algorithm. And pretty much starts a conversation. He starts a correspondence through time with that group in power in the future on how to find the algorithm and get it back to them so that they can end the world. He uses the money to get really rich, and then he gets diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and decides, you know what, I will end the world. If I have to die, I'm going to take the world with me. And yeah, he basically decides he wants to die on his own terms and just like destroy the world while he's at it because he's kind of a prick. So what is a temporal pincer? This term comes up a lot in the film. A temporal pincer is basically when half the team goes through an event and reports at the end of the event. They go back and report the entire event, everything they saw in detail, to the second team, so that then the second team goes back in time. The second team inverts themselves, and they can basically meet at a key point in time to get to change the past and perform a pincer movement, to perform some task. And in this case, the group basically our protagonist and the group basically figures out that an explosion occurred at the beginning of the movie. At the beginning of the movie, we open on an opera where a terrorist attack is happening on an opera. And our protagonist is trying to like thwart the terrorist attack. We find out that at that exact moment, an explosion happened in Kiev. And we find out that that explosion was what Sator was using to bury the time capsule containing the completed algorithm to send back to the future. So they basically want to stop that from happening. They don't really necessarily want to stop the explosion, but they want to take the algorithm and in a pincer movement without anybody knowing, even if the explosion still goes off, they want Sator to think that the explosion hit the algorithm, but they actually took it. That's the plan. And their plan is to execute a military-led pincer movement where Team A goes in, informs Team B, and then Team B inverts, and then they do a precision attack to try to thwart this, to try to make a distraction so that a splinter team can go and take the algorithm. That was a lot. Apologies. Trying my best here, guys. For better or for worse, we're going to get through this. That same time, Sator actually goes on a vacation, a holiday, with his wife, Catherine, and their son. As that's his chosen setting for his own suicide. So he basically made it so that once his heart stops, the location of the time capsule will get transmitted to the future so that that group in power can find the algorithm. So he's basically went on that holiday in order to do that, in order to end his life after the bomb goes off burying the time capsule. So here we go. We're back to the timeline. So the group inverts to inverted timeline B. So in inverted timeline B, our group, so the last we saw them were going through their turnstile at the airport. Catherine gets better. She recovers from her gunshot wound. They go back through another turnstile and go further back in time so that they can meet up at the moment of this explosion so that they can perform this pincer attack. Inverted Catherine goes all the way back as a duplicate normal Catherine in the same timeline. So in that holiday trip, Sator is with Catherine, and now this other Catherine is going to be there, and the idea is that she's going to trick Sator into thinking she's the normal Catherine, while the other Catherine in the timeline is on excursion with her son. So normal Catherine Prime, let's call her, is tasked with convincing Sator to not kill himself and to stall long enough so that the other group can go and steal the algorithm before the explosion buries it. The group prepares this temporal pincer attack where two teams are attacking the explosion site, one inverted and one normal. The normal team has already gone through the exercise and has debriefed the inverted team on exactly what to do in inverse. Their objective is to intentionally fail to defuse the bomb, allowing it to detonate as planned, while the splinter team infiltrates undetected to steal the algorithm before it detonates. And thus ensues a really fucking awesome sequence that you guys gotta go see. Even if this movie doesn't make a fucking lick of sense, even what I'm saying doesn't make sense, this scene is really fucking cool. Because you just have like so much chaos, people going forwards, people going backwards, so much is going on, and it's like another really fucking cool scene in this film. Let's talk about Neil. The film opens on an apparent terrorist attack in an opera. Where we see the protagonist trying to save the opera goers and trying to thwart the attack. The protagonist is actually almost killed when a mysterious inverted soldier with a red string on his backpack kills the terrorist attacking him. We find out later that soldier was Neil, but a much older Neil. More on that later. So Neil is special in this film because he travels kind of more than pretty much any other character in the Turnstiles. We meet Neil officially when he's a much older Neil that has known an older version of the protagonist for years. Yet when we see them, they seem to have just met for the first time. But he's meeting the younger protagonist for, quote, the first time. Neil, throughout the movie, always seems to be in the know about all things inversion, and he keeps referring to us when he's talking about like inversion and suggesting that there's some larger organization that him and the protagonist, unbeknownst to the protagonist, are a part of. In the temporal pincer attack, Neil is a part of the inverted team. The Splinter team, who consists of the protagonist and another soldier named Ives, they proceed into the bomb site with a car honking at them for some reason. We don't know at the time. We just know a car is honking at them. We're just like, what the fuck is that? Why the fuck are they doing that? They go inside the bomb site and they're trapped in there now. The entrance caves in and they can't get out the way they came in. When they get inside and all the way up to where the capsule is being loaded into the ground, they're stopped at a locked gate with a dead body on the other side of it. And that dead body is wearing a backpack with a red string on it. The protagonist is taunted on the phone by Sator as he watches Sator's henchmen prepare the time capsule. He can't do anything because the door is locked. Suddenly, Sator commands his henchmen shoot the protagonist in the head, and then suddenly that body on the floor suddenly comes back to life and is in the way at the exact moment that the gunshot fires off, and so it tells you he was shot in the head, but he's inverted. The body is inverted. We find out that the body was Neil. That was Neil, you know? The idea is that another inverted version we had the inverted version of Neil, that was with that group, with that B team, that inverted team, and this version of Neil actually realized ahead of time that the Splinter crew was going to get trapped in there. He knew they were going to get trapped in there, so he got into the car to honk at them to warn them. They didn't hear it. So knowing that they're not going to have a way out when the bomb goes off, the Neil in the car is now trying to figure out a way to get them out. More on that later. So the dead body that comes back to life turns out to be a second inverted Neil. That was a different inverted Neil. That was an inverted Neil that went back normal through a turnstile to normal and then came back a second time. So at this moment, there are two inverted versions of Neil coexisting like at the same moment. So that was a pretty big confusing part in the film. What it turns out to be is the Neil in the car, who later, once the moments before the bomb is about to go off, after the protagonist secures the algorithm, the Neil in the car actually lowers a rope to take the protagonist, out of the top. Pardon me, out of the top of the hole, so that the protagonist doesn't die. That Neil then is the one that goes back through the turnstile, knowing he's gonna die. He knows he's gonna die, but he goes back through because he has to help them unlock the door. That's crazy. That's crazy to me. I know that sounded like a lot. I know that may not have been easy to follow, but the point is, Neil was kind of the most important character in the film. Neil kept people alive. Neil got the mission done, and then Neil died. And then just before he went back through the turnstile again for the last time, he had like an interaction with the protagonist and kind of revealed, yeah, man, we've known each other for years. You know, you don't know me yet because you're young now, but the protagonist, like once the protagonist grows up, the protagonist is actually like the leader of the organization. You know, he kind of lives through time. This whole paramilitary operation is on his behalf. And Neil and the protagonist have been long friends for years. So even though he's about to die and their friendship feels like it just started, what's going to happen is the protagonist is actually going to reach out to young Neil in the future. And their friendship's actually just going to start. It's going to be like the beginning. So Neil is probably my favorite part of this film. Let's explain this precision time travel with this science. So the idea is that this future group of people in power are leveraging this inversion for precision time travel. This kind of stumped me the first time I watched this film. How are they achieving this? How can they just decide, I want this item to appear at this point of time? My guess on how this happens is that they're inverting. So what they're doing, they're taking whatever message they want, they invert it, and then they bury it in a known location. And the idea is that Sator just happened to be at the right time, at the right place at the right time, because he actually got the first message. As long as somebody can get the first message and send a message back telling where they're gonna be or where they can send the next message, now you have an open line of communication. So now the future can just keep inverting shit and sending it back, and Sator can keep inverting shit and sending it forward. And I think that explains the precision time travel that we're seeing, because we actually even see later in the film, like actually at the end of the film, The protagonist gives Catherine a phone saying, if you ever feel unsafe, I want you to call this phone and leave a message on the place where you are and the exact time of where you are. And that happens later in the film because there's somebody that's trying to like assassinate her, and he appears right behind the assassin, like at the exact moment, and he replays that message literally as she's speaking it. We cut to Catherine, she's saying this, she's saying the exact same thing, and then he replays the message like a moment before that. So I think that is how they're achieving it. And that is Tenet. I wish, I don't know, man. I don't know how effective this was. In my defense, Tenet is an absurdly fucking convoluted movie. It's very entertaining and I really liked the movie, but holy shit, that was a lot harder to explain than I fucking really thought it was going to be. But that was, let me explain, y'all. All right, the last segment we're going to go through tonight is Gozy Zooms In. In this segment, we're going to take a topic or work in pop culture and we're going to analyze the shit out of it. And tonight, that topic is disaster movies. What makes a disaster movie good? And I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, what makes a disaster movie good. What makes a good disaster movie? Starting with characters you care about. So in my opinion, when it comes to disaster movies, they feed into our basest fear of forces we can't control. You know, I think that's the reason why we love disaster movies so much, because we want to see this unimaginable imminent danger occur before our eyes, but we don't want it to happen to us, obviously. But it can't just happen to no-name people. You have to care about who it happens to. You have to empathize with them and put yourself in their shoes. So every character has to have some quality that you connect with emotionally, so that you're kind of buying into their experience, what they're experiencing, the terror they're experiencing, the horror and the fear and the hope and the drive that they're feeling. You feel that too. And I think that's why characters you care about are probably the most important thing in any movie, honestly, but particularly disaster movies, because you need to feel what they're feeling in order to buy into the danger. Let's talk about some of these archetypes. First, let's start with the hapless protagonist. So I think this is a pretty common trope in disaster movies. Pictured here is John Cusack from the film 2012. And 2012 was a movie, I think that came out in 2012, that was banking on the whole Mayan apocalypse. The Mayans, I guess the Mayan calendar from thousands of years ago predicted that the world would end on I think December 21st, 2012. Didn't happen, but they made a movie about it. And the idea was that the whole earth was collapsing in on itself. And there were superstorms, tornadoes showing up in LA, Yellowstone erupted, a massive biblical Noah, the ark flood happens. And humanity builds a literal ark. Here's the key though. The only people that were allowed on the ark were rich people. Fucked up, and they survive too. Usually, if they're gonna have that, usually these days when you have a disaster movie that makes it so that the rich people can get off the plane and all the poor people stay and die, usually these days they'll just make the rich people still get fucked in the end. Don't Look Up, that's what they did in Don't Look Up. But in this one, the rich people survive, so I'm that sucks. But the idea is that the hapless protagonist is supposed to be an everyman. It's supposed to be a person that's just a normal. He's not an expert on a world expert on anything. He's just a normal person, a normal woman, normal dude, just a normal person going about their life that just happens to be trying to survive an apocalypse. And that's kind of the case with 2012. Part of the reason why I just think 2012 is such a funny movie is that if you've seen this movie, this guy and his family are just the luckiest creatures on earth. I swear to God, literally 4 or 5 different times throughout the movie, they just narrowly escape their own death. And it's not even just their own death, horrible disasters that killed millions of other people, and they got out of there. Either they just drove out of there in their truck and while the fucking earth is collapsing under them, or they just flew out of there on their plane while the fucking fault of Wanda Fuke is fucking up California. It was amazing how convenient it is. And I really need to watch this movie again because it was just so fucking funny. Not to mention the VFX in this movie was really, really good too. But the idea is that he's the everyman. This is who you identify with as yourself. You're you know what, that's me. If a disaster happened and I was the protagonist, that'd be me. That's the hapless protagonist. Another kind of protagonist is the hardened or experienced protagonist. This is Bruce Willis in Armageddon. He's like a hardened drill dude. You know, he leads a team of drillers, he's good at his job. He's been doing his job for 30 years. And we find out that there's a comet or an asteroid that's hurtling towards Earth, and the only way to get rid of the asteroid is for a team to go and land on the asteroid. Like, you have to go into space and land on an asteroid and drill deep into the asteroid and drop a nuke in there, so that when the nuke explodes, the asteroid splits in half and it'll miss Earth. I think that this method's actually been debunked by scientists, which is hilarious. I think they debunked this as this would actually not work. But this was a really solid disaster movie. It's funny enough, like I realized later in life that this movie is actually like kind of universally panned a little bit, but I still like it. I cry. Like, it's a solid movie. You really care about the protagonist, and it's mostly because of his family. And we'll get to kids and family later, but he's just a really capable person. I keep saying it's not always a guy. It's a woman too. And The Impossible, Naomi Watts was like the protagonist for that, and she was a badass bitch. And that's a woman right there. So it's not just a dude. I'm saying he, but it's just a person that is extremely capable, you know. When the worst possible disaster occurs, they fucking take it on the chin and they just fucking get out of it, you know. They take charge of the situation. That's the hardened or experienced protagonist. Then there's the romance. Oh, what's a disaster movie without romance, guys? Pictured here are Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt from Twister. This is kind of the core emotion to into the film. And you know, it's not always like this. It's either a romance or it's kids. We'll get to kids later, but it's just something human to care about, something human to look forward to after the disaster's over. If they can overcome the disaster, this is the prize at the end. And I think that's what the romance is. In Twister, you've got Bill Paxton's character, who is like a tornado expert, and also Helen Hunt's character. And I think they were like previously married, and they would go chase tornadoes together, but they are like estranged now, and maybe divorced, I forget, or separated or whatever. And they're trying to chase this mother of all twisters, and it's very dangerous, and they're doing it together, and they almost die. They see the eye, they have to strap themselves to the earth with belts, and then they're lifted up, but they get to look into the eye of a twister, and it's like the most beautiful thing, and they get to do it together, and then they see the tornado pass over them, and then they're like embracing, like, we're in love again. We've overcome our differences because, you know, like our near death experience, so let's fucking be in love again, or something like that. I don't know. The idea is that this is the thing you care about. This is the prize at the end of the movie. If we can overcome the disaster, then we can live happily ever after in love. The comic relief. You always need comic relief. I think, honestly, in any movie, not just like disaster movies, in any movie, you need comic relief. You got to have a jokester. And it's usually one character. Pictured here is Jonah Hill from Don't Look Up. And this is a pretty unique example because Don't Look Up, I consider that was a comedy. I consider that film a comedy, man. It was so over the top satirical that it was just straight up fucking comedy. It's like SNL. It was like SNL proportions of satire, where it's so on the nose that it's just like, can you even call it satire anymore? But, and I didn't like the movie. I thought it was fantastic visual effects throughout the movie. I thought just about every character was unlikable as hell, except for Jonah Hill, because he was like, the idea is that he was like the son of this like president that was a very direct, on the nose satire of Donald Trump. And he was the son of that president. And he was like a total fucking idiot. And the idea is that they were all idiots. All of the politicians were fucking morons. And he's sitting here like just cracking jokes. Like, I guess the one of the scientists was just kind of a unique woman, you know. She had her own aesthetic, but he liked to take shots at her aesthetic, and she would Jennifer Lawrence's character would take shots back at him, and it was a really funny dynamic. And I think that was like the only enjoyable part of that film for me. I really disliked that film. There was like a solid hour, pretty much from the point where they started trying to like do like a social media campaign to raise awareness about the comet. Like, it got so on the nose that I was like, okay, skip. And I like skipped a solid hour of the film. I saw it on Fast Forward. I saw like there was a concert that Ariana Grande did. I was like, this is so cringy. That movie was so fucking cringy. But Jonah Hill being the comic relief was about the only good thing that came out of it. So when in doubt, if the disaster movie is bad as hell, if you have a good comic relief character, it might just save the movie a little bit for you. Then you got the smarty pants. You got the expert, the scientist, the scientist that no one listens to, but everybody, once shit hits the fan, everybody turns to that scientist to come up with a big convoluted plan to save the day. Pictured here is Dennis Quaid from The Day After Tomorrow. And basically The Day After Tomorrow was, it was basically, it feels like a lot of these disaster movies stem from like global warming causing some fuckery to happen, Like, and in this case, it was no different. In The Day After Tomorrow, global warming like made it so that the world was going to enter like second ice age. So these like super storms, these super hyper hurricanes would just like go rampage around the earth and flood like all of these major cities, and then the ice age would happen and everything would freeze in seconds. And the idea is that Dennis Quaid's character was like the scientist that detected this was going to happen. He was like a meteorologist or something like that. And he tried to warn the world. He tried to warn the politicians, and they didn't listen. This is a trope that's in every single one of these disasters, because like every one of these disasters are detectable by scientists. We have scientists that would detect those. An asteroid's coming to Earth, a scientist is going to detect that like years in advance or months in advance at the least. Yellowstone's about to erupt. We're going to get weeks notice for that shit. But the idea is that it's a reflection on our society. We already saw in COVID, all of these scientists trying to inform the public about the realities of COVID-19. And then you have politicians like Donald Trump amongst others. There were a lot of politicians calling it outright hoaxes, saying that there's this a hoax. No, everything's fine. And like we see these like exaggerated disaster movies kind of do the exact same thing, and we're thinking, oh no, man, no. If there was an asteroid hurtling toward the Earth, or if the core of the Earth suddenly stopped rotating and now the Earth is slowing down, like the politicians would totally listen to the scientists. No, they wouldn't, because we literally just went through this with COVID. That's the reason. There's a reason why this trope shows up in every single disaster movies, because it's fucking real. This is exactly what would have happened if this disaster happened IRL. The scientist that no one listens to until it's too late. And then you have the asshole that redeems himself, and can be from sacrifice that he redeems himself. I think this is like the antagonist of the movie. In these disaster movies, the true antagonist is the disaster. Our protagonist, our group of protagonists are fighting to stop this disaster or mitigate it in a way that we can prevent the most loss of life. That's the goal. With a movie like that, with such a large and like largely unseen antagonist, you have to have conflict. And that's where the asshole comes in. When you have a whole group of people that are all trying to work together to solve this problem on this convoluted plan, you got one person that thinks they're right. One person that just has a shitty attitude. Like in this case, and this is Stanley Tucci from The Core. In The Core, basically the Earth's core, the Earth's inner core, stopped rotating, and it was causing the Earth's rotation to slow down as well. I don't know about the scientific accuracy of that. I guess the magnetic field, something about that. I don't know. Let's not focus on that. But the idea is that it was making it so that like massive natural disasters were like rampaging the Earth, including one meteor shower, which I don't really know where that fits in. No, I'm mixing that up with Armageddon. That was a different thing. There was a fucking meteor. I gotta watch this movie again. I haven't seen this movie in like 20 years. Anywho, the idea is that this character that Stanley Tucci was playing was one of the scientists that was tasked to enter the core. They built like this penis-like receptacle that was supposed to drill down into the middle of the Earth, and then the idea is they're gonna drop nuclear bombs in key positions around the core that will all explode in sequence, causing pretty much kickstarting the core to start rotating again. Science of it, I don't know. I'm not here to debate the science of that. It sounds a little sus to me, but we're not here to debate that. And he's one of the scientists that goes down there, and he pretty much just like antagonizes and contradicts the other scientists every step of the way. You know, he's a total dick. He even gets into a fist fight with somebody as soon as like some conflict that went wrong in the middle of the earth during the mission happens. Like he's kind of the one that gets like separated from them, but he finds the opportunity to redeem himself because somebody has to. I think the idea is that they find out that their plan's not going to work. They get down there, and they're doing calculations. They're just like, holy shit, this won't work. So we have to like do this a different way. And I guess the way they were going to do it is that they're going to put the nuclear bombs in different compartments and eject the compartments themselves. I think what they were trying to do is they were going to drop the bombs themselves in the core, but then like they realized you can't drop a bomb in the core. As soon as it touches the lava, it's going to explode. So I don't know. I didn't watch the movie. The point is, one of the compartments was like, I guess, damaged, and he had to stay behind and explode it, and he became a hero for that. So that's the asshole that redeems themselves. And then finally, the son or daughter of the hardened protagonist. The idea is that family. So you either got romance, looked forward to, or you have family. Yeah, y'all seen Fast and Furious. Family. It's family to look forward to. This is the thing that if you can get out of the disaster, this is our happily ever after. Pictured here are Tom Holland and Naomi Watts from The Impossible, which was a film that was depicting the real life experiences of a family that was vacationing in Indonesia in 2004 when the tsunami occurred that killed like hundreds of thousands of people. And this is a fantastic movie, extremely graphic, extremely raw, but very fantastic movie. And the idea is that we follow the different stories. The family gets separated from each other, and we follow the different stories of the parents as well as the kids being, and then this little boy being by himself. And you're kind of it hooks you into that emotional part because now you're just like you're hoping and hoping and hoping that the family comes back together. You're hoping this mom gets to see her other two boys again. You know, that's the happily ever after. You know, if we can, this is what keeps you hooked into the drama of the film, that keeps you watching for them to exit this disaster so that they can see each other again. So that's the happily ever after. Every disaster movie has to have an unimaginable disaster that wipes out a ton of people that you don't give a fuck about. You see this in every single fucking one. Every single disaster movie, pretty much, even a lot of them even open up with this, where the first opening scene or the first few scenes are the disaster occurring, and then millions of people are dying. What that's doing is that is establishing the stakes. That establishes the stakes. Y'all have heard me say this before in talking about other genres of movie. An audience needs to know what the stakes are, and they need to be big. They need to be high. You know, they need to be dramatic. The bigger and more unseen this danger is, the more terrifying. You know, so this film is actually a comedy film called This Is the End, by Jay Baruchel and Seth Rogen and fucking James Franco and like all these motherfuckers. That's not Kevin Michael Richardson. I forget his name. Keith Richardson? I forget his name. It's not Kevin Michael Richardson. That's somebody else. I always forget this dude's name. Anyway, the idea is that the world ends for them and they're trapped in James Franco's mansion for the vast majority of the film. For most of the film, we don't even see what's going on outside. We just know that it's fucked up. We know that it's like it's something fucked up. But like the film keeps you intrigued with the comedy. It's a comedy film. It's extremely funny, but it still kind of like hammers in the stakes by giving you snippets of what's going on outside, to the point where it culminates in them actually going outside later in the film, and you find out it's literal hell on earth. It's like a giant demon, a giant Satan with a giant pendulous wiener that's like fucking walking around, and the rapture happened and all that shit. That's the idea. You need an unimaginable disaster that kills just about everybody. It could be a volcano erupting that's threatening a town. It doesn't need to be millions of people. It can just be a scoped down to a town. It can be an asteroid threatening Earth. It can be a superstorm devastating a city. It could be a rogue wave that's overturning a cruise ship. It just needs to be something so big and so scary that the audience just imagines, oh my God, if I was in that situation, that'd be so scary. That's the emotional response you're trying to elicit from a disaster, from showing a disaster movie to an audience. you need a character or multiple characters that happens to be an expert in that exact disaster. Happens every time. Every fucking one of these movies, there's an expert that comes in and says, I've been researching this for years. Pictured here is Kate Winslet from Contagion. And in that film, she portrays an epidemic intelligence service officer that is trying to survey the severity of the illness. Contagion was a very good movie, and it's one I actually watched that movie pretty early on in COVID, which was a mistake. It was really, really, really fascinating watching that movie because just about everything I had seen this movie when it first came out, like in 2014, years ago, long before I even ever thought that an epidemic of like that kind of the size of COVID could even happen to us. So watching it again and seeing everything that's happening in the film, like it was almost like word for word exactly what we went through, social distancing and vaccine shortages and quote unquote fake news, like misinformation, vast misinformation going all over the place. Conspiracy theorists saying things like fucking horse tranquilizers and shit are gonna keep you immune to it. Like that's all of the shit that we fucking experienced in COVID was in this movie, and I found that so fucking crazy. And I think that's why like this movie was so like effective, because it was rooted in reality, like all of these experts that we would follow, all of the medical terminology that they would say are the same stuff that we heard Dr. Fauci saying, all of these other medical professionals, full body protective gear for doctors, like it's even all the way down to the fucking origin of the virus. Like it was really fascinating how close to COVID that this film was. And and part of that is having real experts in the film that were tailored to that disaster. It happens in every single disaster movie. Then you also have the government or otherwise people in charge bumbling the handling of the disaster. It's supposed to frustrate you. Pictured here is the captain of the Titanic in the 1997 film Titanic. If you guys are familiar with that entire story, the idea is that the Titanic was the largest ship ever made, and on its maiden voyage, it sunk. It hit an iceberg and it sunk. And of the some 3,000 people that were on the ship at the time, only 700 survived. It was a massive bumbling of that rescue effort, and a huge part of it was the fact that the person that designed the ship refused to have enough lifeboats on the ship that could save everybody. That is now an international law. Every single vessel that goes out on the water has to have enough boats to save everybody on the ship. This one didn't. Even if they would have even used all of the boats, and they didn't. There were boats that were not used at all. There were some boats where they were only, they could have fit like 150 people or something like that, and they only had 50 people on it. Like, it was fascinating how much this got bumbled. Then all the way up to the actual disaster itself happening. Apparently the people, the Titanic had already received reports from other neighboring ships that were in the area saying, hey, there's icebergs out here. They're in the middle of the night. They can't see anything. And they got warned. They got multiple warnings. The first mate saw the iceberg ahead of time and tried to inform the captain. But the captain was like, no, we need this is the maiden voyage. We have to be on time. So we have to be full speed ahead. All of the negligence you can possibly fucking think of happened. And part of what makes this so effective is that this really happened. Like, this is real. Like, the Titanic it was actually bumbled this way. But the idea when depicting this sort of negligence in a disaster film, it's supposed to frustrate you. You're supposed to be sitting here going, what the fuck, dude? What the fuck? Why did you? There's your warning right there. You're supposed to, that's the response that they're trying to get from you. In this having the government fuck this up. We mentioned last week, and when we were talking about The End Is Nigh, the act of cow. The act of cow is when humans do something, or maybe don't do anything at all, but whatever they do, it actively makes the situation worse. And that's important in every disaster movie. You're supposed to have this conflict. You're supposed to have it for drama. Then you also have mass hysteria as the disaster worsens. So this is pretty much people being stupid in general, because by human nature, we panic. If the shit hits the fan, if the shit hit the fan, we fucking lose our fucking minds. So in all of these disaster movies, whenever the mass public finds out about the real threat, they freak the fuck out. Pictured here is a screenshot from Tokyo Sinks 2022, which was the single worst anime movie I've ever seen in my fucking life. Basically, the premise was that Tokyo was sinking. Like the country of Japan is an island, and it was fucking sinking. And it was a natural disaster. Everybody was really heavily impacted by it, and we follow for the most part this family, who stays together for the most part, but they make some of the dumbest decisions I have ever seen anybody make. I'm only going to tell you one because it's going to piss me off if I talk too much about this show. I just hate it. I might actually do a whole segment on this fucking movie because it was just the worst anime movie I've ever seen in my fucking life. There's one point where they're hungry and they're going through the ruins of Japan. They're trying to traverse to the highest point of Japan so they can try to get out of Japan. And they come upon this area that says that like these vegetables are planted there. So they're just like, oh, let's go dig up some vegetables. We find out, and he takes the dad here, he takes a shovel and he's trying to dig up the vegetables. The camera then pans to a very clear sign. It was the clearest fucking sign. It was not hidden. It was out in the open. If you just read the sign, you would know. The sign said that there were mines. There were mines buried, why are there mines buried where vegetables are buried? I don't know. But there were mines, and there were signs saying that. And the fucking dad hits one of the mines and explodes and dies. He fucking died, and I was like, what the fuck is this? That moment, like up to that point, I was like, okay, this movie's kind of stupid, but that wasn't a movie, it was a TV show. This TV show is kind of stupid, but I'm just gonna stick with it. And this happened in like the second episode. I was so mad by this point, and the whole rest of the show didn't get better. These characters just kept making the dumbest ass decisions and getting themselves killed. And at the end, the whole family's dead except for like the little boy, and I think the little girl survived too. But I'm like, God damn it, this movie's. I'm about to. Okay, I've decided we're gonna do a segment on this fucking movie because this is. Oh God, this movie just made me so mad. People being stupid and doing stupid things. That needs to happen in disasters for the same reason as the government bumbling it. It's supposed to piss you off. It's supposed to make you go exactly the emotional reaction you just heard me have recounting this terrible fucking show. That's what they want. That's what they want. They want you to look at that and be like, I would never do that shit. But like, yeah, you kind of would. Like, people are stupid when they're scared. And then the characters come up with a convoluted plan to save the world, or as many people as possible. Pictured here is from the film Volcano. I think Tommy Lee Jones was the lead character in that film, and it's basically what you're seeing here. The premise of the film is that a volcano suddenly erupts in the middle of Los Angeles. Okay, fair. And there's just lava going all over the place. It's just destroying the city, and people are dying and shit. Their plan to stop the volcano was to redirect the lava from LA to the ocean using concrete slabs and fire trucks. The science of it, I'm not going to sit here and debate that, but it worked for them. They did it, so it fucking stopped the volcano from erupting. But that's the idea. Like, a disaster has to have some complex plan that they think up, and then they have to execute the plan, and then, of course, they get happily ever after. Excuse me. Or maybe happily ever after. They execute the plan and people die, and it's supposed to be sad. Remember, the emotional pull, the things that the thing that keeps people emotionally invested in disaster movies are the characters that they're emotionally connected to, that they can empathize with, that they can connect to. And it's always most effective when some of them die. In just about every disaster movie out there, you've got a set of main characters. I name a single one where everybody fucking gets out alive. I can't think of a single one. Somebody always dies, and it's just at least one person. And a lot of the times, it's somebody sacrificing themselves for the greater good. Because I think the reason why that trope reappears a lot in disaster and in movies in general is that there's just like an innate human desire to save the greater good, to sacrifice oneself for the greater good. That's something you see in a lot of films. It's not just disaster films, but you do see it a lot in disaster films as well. And then the romance couple or the son or daughter live on happily ever after. The disaster is thwarted, or if it's not thwarted, it's stopped enough that you can save as many people as you can. And everybody lives happily ever after. This is from Independence Day, where at the end they get to Will Smith and fucking Jesus Christ, I forgot his fucking name. Sexy guy. Jesus Christ. Life finds a way. I don't know. Somebody's gonna tell me who his name is. I'm just like blanking on his fucking name. But the idea is that they're walking in slow motion after killing all the aliens, and they get to meet up with their families, and they get a kiss, they get a smooch, and they're like, "Good job." Like that's the happily ever after. Everybody gets Goldman. Oh fuck. John. No, I just lost it. I had it. Jeff Goldman. Jeff Goldberg. Jeff. Okay, this is gonna bother me. But you know, Jeff Goldblum. Shit. Okay, I can't believe it took me like literally like 3 minutes to remember Jeff Goldblum's name. Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum. There we go. Sorry, Jeff Daddy. I forgot your name. Either you. And then here's the corollary ending. Either you get the happily ever after, or you don't, and everybody dies anyway. Like in Don't Look Up, where the government bumbling the fuck out of preventative measures or measures to save as many people as you can. Especially because actually, even I think in Don't Look Up, they actually had a real plan that they could have diverted the asteroid if they acted in time, and they couldn't. They didn't because the government like just wouldn't fucking do it. And as a result, they doomed the Earth, and the asteroid hit the Earth and it killed everybody. Or in Titanic, where like all them bumbling everything killed 2,000 people. Like it's sometimes that's the ending you get. Sometimes that's the ending you get. I think personally, in terms of viewing experience, I prefer the happily ever after, because it's kind of a reward after sitting through all of that. You get a reward that everybody gets to live happily ever after. But it is definitely an appropriate thing to depict, where we don't live happily ever after, where the disaster takes hold and we all die, because that's more rooted in reality. Because quite frankly, like we saw in The End Is Nigh, if a natural disaster of that proportion occurred, and if we don't do anything to prevent it right now, we really probably will all die. So it's definitely a valid way to go. But personally, I like the happily ever after. And that, folks, is what I think goes into a good disaster movie. And that concludes Gozy Zooms In, and it concludes the podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. This podcast will be up on all major platforms on Friday. That kind of does it for the show. My name is Ngozi Mai. This has been Did Y'all See That? And I hope to see you next time. All right, y'all. Bye.